In a daring heist, a group of elderly criminals managed to break into a heavily guarded vault in London, containing hundreds of safe deposits and boxes filled with gold jewelry and cash. The value of the stolen goods was estimated at about £14 million, even though the youngest of the criminals was in his 60s. This operation was like their grand retirement, as they chose it to be the last adventure of their lives, and it was classified by the authorities and the press as one of the largest heists in British history. However, due to the difficulty and sensitivity of this adventure, any small mistake could lead the police to arrest them. In this video, we will reveal the exciting details, precise planning, and tight execution of this crime that shook the entire throne of Britain. The events of this incident date back to April 2015, precisely in the heart of London in the famous Diamond District, where a gang of elderly thieves dug a wall behind the safe deposit company called Hatton Garden, and they carried out the theft in a very complex way to obtain money, valuable jewelry, and more. Hatton Garden in London is famous for diamonds, with a history spanning generations as one of the most important areas housing stores for selling precious jewelry. Additionally, all the jewelers in that area are accustomed to storing their valuables in the safety deposit boxes at the depository company Hatton Garden. This company is also located in the Hatton Garden area in central London, and it is a facility specialized in providing secure storage for valuable items inside individual safety deposit boxes. Individuals and companies often rent these boxes to store money, jewelry, important documents, and other valuable possessions. This facility was built in the 1940s and was considered an impregnable fortress, thanks to its advanced security features, such as surveillance systems, access control cameras, and other strict measures and procedures to protect the contents of the boxes and safe deposits. Despite all these precautions, the facility was breached and a robbery was carried out by a gang of 6 elderly thieves. The oldest among them was Brian Rear, who was 76 years old, and we can say that he was the mastermind of this operation. Brian is also known for his previous criminal history, as he had been imprisoned for several notorious thefts, but he was proven innocent in one murder case. The second member of this gang, an undercover police officer named Terry Perkins, who celebrated his 67th birthday during the robbery, participated in all its stages, including the disposal of the stolen goods. He also has diabetes and suffers from heart problems. Perkins had previously participated in a robbery of Security Express in 1983, which was considered the largest cash robbery in British history. The third member is John Collins, also known as Kenny. He was 64 years old. He has a criminal record in theft dating back to the year 1961. As for the fourth member, he is Danny Jones, who took on the role of the gang's driver and lookout in this operation. Jones is considered the youngest member of the gang and is 60 years old. He was an experienced criminal in theft, with convictions for burglary and dealing in stolen goods dating back to the year 1975. The fifth member is Carl Wood, who also has a criminal history in theft. The last member of the gang is called Vasil, but this is not his real name, and he was nicknamed the Ghost because investigators could not obtain any information about him. He was also known for his ability to disappear from sight. He used a wig during the operation, as he was responsible for disabling the alarm system, being an expert in electronics. Two other people also participated in this operation, but they were not directly involved in the theft and only provided assistance to the gang after it was carried out. And it is clear from the information that the common factor among all the gang members, despite their advanced age, was their extensive experience and long criminal records in theft, reflecting their professionalism and rich history in the world of crime, especially in the field of burglary and theft. Age was not a barrier for them to carry out one of the most daring thefts in British history, and their ability to execute successful thefts highlighted their high level of expertise in this field. Even though their criminal activity might seem outdated and unsuitable for carrying out such massive thefts due to their old age, they sought to achieve one of the most perfect crimes in their lives that history will remember them for. The elderly gang led by Brian Reader spent 3 years meticulously planning the heist. Then, they carefully divided the roles. Each one had a specific role, such as the driver, the lookout, and the leader. They left nothing to chance, as they watched YouTube videos on how to use large drills to penetrate the thick concrete vault wall. In addition, they read a forensic science book for beginners to be able to cover their tracks and leave no evidence behind. This book presents topics such as collecting evidence at the crime scene and DNA analysis. With this meticulous preparation and attention to the smallest details, the gang was fully prepared to execute their plan with confidence, determined to carry out the operation of a lifetime with professionalism and skill. The only thing left for the gang was to choose the date of execution. Then the gang chose the Easter holiday to carry out their theft. This choice was well thought out for strategic reasons, as the Easter holiday is an extended vacation period, giving the criminals more time to conduct their operations without arousing suspicion. Moreover, as mentioned before, the Hatton Garden safe deposit is located in central London, an area known for the jewelry and diamond trade. During this holiday, most businesses will be closed, ensuring that the vault will also be closed. This situation reduces activity in the area, decreasing the chances of witnesses or any interruptions that might disrupt the execution of their plan. The gang was meticulously planning to take advantage of the surrounding circumstances, targeting the perfect time to execute their bold plan with minimal risk. On Thursday, the 2nd of April, 2015, on the eve of the Easter holiday, the Hatton Garden staff closed the doors. The Hatton Garden heist had begun. In return, the gang members arrived at 8:20 in the evening in a white van driven by John Collins, except for the gang leader Brian Reader, who came on a public bus using a free ticket for retirees. They stopped the truck on a nearby street where two members, Danny Jones and Carl Wood, got out wearing maintenance workers' uniforms. They went to take a look at the target, which was the building housing the safe deposit boxes, and then walked away. One item. And then they returned at 9:20 in the evening as part of a carefully planned step to ensure no suspicions were raised. Vasil appeared approaching the building carrying a black garbage bag on his shoulder to avoid revealing his identity in front of the surveillance cameras. Vasil managed to enter the building through the main front door, using a key he obtained in his own way. After entering, he immediately headed to the side fire escape and opened the door from the inside. Meanwhile, the gang's white truck stopped, and they began unloading their tools using garbage bins they planned to use to smuggle the loot out of the building. Afterwards, the driver John Collins went to park the car in a distant place while he chose a suitable spot for himself as an observer. In one of the apartments opposite the Hatton Garden headquarters. The surveillance location was carefully chosen, allowing Collins to monitor both the front and side doors, enabling him to warn his colleagues at any moment using the wireless communication device as previously coordinated. The gang members entered the building carrying their tools through the side door of the fire exit. They made their way to the basement where they broke into the courtyard through another door and waited there with their equipment next to the control room door leading to the vault area. After that, two of them went up to the second floor using the elevator, then disabled it so they could go back down to the ground floor. Then they forcefully opened the outer door of the elevator shaft and descended to the basement, where they found a metal shutter. They opened part of it, crawled under, and made their way toward the basement area where the vault is located under the stairs. There was a small room containing the control devices for the pressure equalizing room doors, as well as surveillance cameras and the alarm system. Vasil was an electronics expert, so he managed to disable the system and cut the power to the pressure room door, allowing the other members to enter with the equipment. After all the gang members were in the basement, the only thing separating them from the vault was the iron door. They used an angle grinder to cut the iron door. But while they were busy with this operation, something unexpected happened. Although Vasil had disabled the alarm system, a message was sent to the company responsible for the security of this facility, which decided to send one of its guards to check the situation and ensure whether there was something dangerous or if it was just a false alarm. Usually, in similar cases, the police should be notified. But when the security guard arrived at the site, he checked the front door lock. He didn't find anything suspicious. Then he went to the side door, and the situation there was normal too, which made him think there was nothing to worry about. Therefore, he did not inform any authority, and the police did not come. The strange thing about these events is that John Collins, the surveillance man, was deeply asleep at that moment. Fortunately for the gang, there was nothing outside the building to prove their presence during that time. After cutting the iron gate bars, they reached the basement door in Hatton Garden. Their plan was to break through the concrete wall of the vault, which was only half a meter thick. They were now just half a meter away from the valuable treasure they planned to seize. Of course, it was almost impossible to penetrate such walls without using special heavy equipment. For this reason, the gang brought a huge drill, as using such massive machines is something not everyone knows how to operate and use. And so, during the preparation phase, the gang members watched YouTube videos on how to use this massive drill and became proficient in operating it. Then they placed the massive drill on the wall next to the basement door and began drilling. During the drilling process, the gang's emotions were mixed as they felt happy when they remembered the previous years in which they carried out successful heists. But at the same time, they were afraid, because their biggest fear was the possibility of getting caught, as they knew very well that going to prison at this age would mean the end of their lives behind bars. For them, their goal was not only to make money if they succeeded in this operation, but they were also looking to become the heroes of the biggest heist in British history. This robbery would immortalize their names in British history and make them legends in the eyes of future generations. It's true that they are criminals, but they are not ordinary. They were in their 60s and 70s and were about to carry out the biggest heist in British history. After hours of digging, they managed to break through the wall and created 3 overlapping circular holes next to each other. They intended to enter the vault through it, and when they looked inside through the opening, there was a surprise waiting for them. The gang had made 3 holes in the back of the safe deposit box cabinet, but opposite the dug wall, they faced an unexpected surprise. There was a safe deposit box bolted to the wall from ceiling to floor, making it impossible to reach. This shock was a disappointment for them, as despite all the planning and preparations, this detail was not taken into account. At that moment, they realized their plan had failed. Brian Rear, the leader, decided to leave the site and look for an alternative plan. The gang made their way out through the side door to escape, carrying their tools. Their white truck, driven by Collins, was waiting for them. They got into the truck and left the place, as Brian Rear decided that leaving the building was the best option after their plan failed. Moreover, Brian Rear decided to withdraw as he did not want to return to Hatton Park to complete what they had started. He strongly believed that mistakes happen when one deviates from the plan, and his old age made him unable to bear all this pressure. So he did not want to take risks. He also asked the other members to make the same decision. But for them, the spoils were too tempting to give up, and they tried to persuade Brian to continue, but he was stubborn, and he refused to continue with their plan. In the end, the other members decided to return without their leader, Brian Rear. And after deep thought, they realized they needed a hydraulic pump to push the safe deposit box. So, on Saturday afternoon, John Collins and Danny Jones went in a distinctive white Mercedes to a large equipment store to look for the hydraulic pump. Collins stopped by the store, then Danny Jones went in to make the purchase. Moments later, he came out carrying the required tool and placed it in the trunk of the car. Then they left at night and decided to drive around the Hatton Garden building to see if things were going well or if the theft had been discovered. And late on Saturday night, Vasil allowed the gang to enter. The first night they entered through the side fire escape door. On their way to the basement, Carl Wood noticed a light shining in the place, which made him feel nervous. Because of this light, Carl Wood immediately decided to pull the other members, and they tried to calm him down and convince him that it was not a big deal and that there was nothing to worry about. But Carl Wood insisted on leaving the place, assuring them that they should have listened to Brian Rear because this might be a trap set by the police. And when Carl Wood decided to leave the place, only 4 people remained. The remaining gang members were Danny Jones, Vasil, and Terry Perkins inside the building, while John Collins was on lookout because they insisted on completing the plan they had started, ignoring the anxiety and fear that their friend Carl Wood felt. As we mentioned earlier, this time the gang brought a new tool, the hydraulic pump. Thanks to this tool, they were able to apply pressure of 10 tons, which caused a big headache. Then the safe deposit vault was pushed, allowing them to access millions of pounds in gold, cash, and jewelry. Danny Jones and Vasil entered the vault through the drilled holes and began opening the safety deposit boxes, handing their contents to Perkins, who was waiting outside. Perkins' task was to sort the contents of the boxes, which were filled with money, jewelry, gold, diamonds, and everything valuable, while he disposed of items he considered less valuable, such as documents and papers, by throwing them in the trash. The vault contained 999 safety deposit boxes, but the gang managed to open only 37 boxes. This might be due to the weight they could carry in the wheeled boxes. Despite that, the stolen loot was of immense value, making this operation classified as one of the largest thefts in history. Afterwards, the gang returned to the side door of the building where Collins was waiting with his white car. They then loaded the trash bins filled with treasures, got into the car, and left the area. On Tuesday, the 7th of April, 2015, the first day after the Easter holiday, the Hatton Garden area returned to normal operations, including the jewelers and the safe deposit box employees. At that time, the theft was discovered and the police were immediately notified. They arrived around 8 o'clock in the morning and began investigating the crime. When they entered the vault, they found it in complete chaos. Everything was covered in dust and debris, and the safe deposit boxes were empty and broken on the floor next to the electrical tools used in the break-in. This incident caused devastation to the traders and local businesses, as all their valuable possessions and money were stored in the Hatton Garden safe deposit box. Their businesses were severely affected by the theft, which they couldn't believe had happened, as most of them thought that such a vault was impenetrable. It was robbed, and the thieves entered the building, stole their possessions, and left without any police intervention. Despite the vault being equipped with an alarm system, the incident made the safety deposit box clients at Hatton Garden feel insecure and question the effectiveness of the security measures. As a result, police officers had to apologize, explaining that the security procedures were not properly followed by the security company. When they received an alert from the Hatton Garden alarm system, the matter was not handled with the necessary seriousness. They were supposed to contact the police, and because of this mistake, the vault was robbed. Then the investigators began examining the crime scene, hoping to find evidence that could lead them to the thieves. They were looking for any starting point, whether it was a fingerprint or a DNA sample. The area was carefully searched for any evidence that could provide crucial information about the identity of the perpetrators. Unfortunately for them, the gang was extremely cautious in executing their operation and left no forensic evidence behind, making the investigation more difficult and complex. According to some investigators, they found bleach bottles at the crime scene, which is a chemical liquid used by the gang to damage their fingerprints. Additionally, it turned out that the gang took the surveillance hard drives, which means they took extra steps to avoid capturing any images or evidence pointing to them. The gang left the investigators with no concrete evidence indicating their identity, further complicating the investigation process. However, the investigators gradually began to form a clearer picture of the people they were dealing with. It became clear to them that the gang possessed high skills and extensive knowledge of criminal methods. especially in the field of forensic medicine, which means that capturing them would be a significant challenge. Moreover, the timing of the theft put the investigators in a serious problem, as the theft occurred during the Easter holiday, a time when the police were particularly busy, which led these circumstances to give the gang a greater opportunity, which put the police on the defensive and now forced them to arrest the members before they dispose of the stolen items. It was like a race against time, as the police had to speed up the investigations to catch the gang before they disappeared. The police were put under great pressure. Even though the gang had planned the robbery meticulously, they overlooked some important details, namely that London is one of the cities with an extensive network of surveillance cameras throughout, meaning every corner of the city is monitored. This constituted an initial achievement for the police, as the extensive coverage of surveillance cameras proved to be a decisive advancement in the investigation. The police also obtained important footage of the perpetrator's movements on the night of the theft, and investigators were able to see the white truck used by the gang, in addition to footage of two men disguised as maintenance workers. Brian was carrying the box bag on his shoulder to avoid surveillance cameras. These shots allowed the police to build a clear picture of how the theft occurred. The investigators focused on the truck and used the license plate number to identify its owner. The name was not real, but fake, leading them to conclude that the truck was purchased specifically for this operation, and that the gang had disposed of it after the robbery. This lack of physical evidence increased the police's frustration. Surveillance cameras also revealed something important on Friday morning, as the gang appeared on cameras leaving the Hatton Garden building without any bags of loot. This shows that the gang returned on Saturday night for a second attempt, and the next morning they left with garbage bins full of loot. And they loaded it into the truck, which proved to the investigators that the theft was carried out in 2 attempts. The gang members were unable to leave with what they came for the first time for unknown reasons, but their second attempt was successful. By studying the footage, investigators discovered the mistake made by the gang that would lead to their downfall an hour before the second break-in. John Collins appeared on surveillance cameras driving his white Mercedes around the security vault, Hatton Garden, as mentioned earlier, where Collins toured around the building before the second break-in to check if there was any activity or if anyone had discovered what they were doing. The thing that made the investigators suspicious was that Collins's car specifically had circled the building several times, and this was a grave mistake made by Collins, which would open the entire investigation to identify the owner of the white Mercedes. These repeated movements not only raised suspicions about him, but also provided investigators with conclusive evidence that he was part of the planning and execution of the operation. Then the investigation took a decisive turn when the police were able to identify the owner of the white Mercedes used in the theft. The police relied on surveillance cameras and automatic license plate recognition technology, which is used to detect wanted vehicles. When a car passes in front of the surveillance camera equipped with the system, its registration number is read and immediately updated against a database containing records of vehicles wanted by the police. Thanks to this technology, investigators were able to track the path of the white Mercedes, discovering that it passed through multiple cameras in different areas. Based on this information, the police were able to track the car's movements, leading them to a residential area where they found the car parked. They now had to keep the car under surveillance to find out who was using it. After a period of surveillance, the police were able to determine that the elderly man who regularly used that car was named John Collins. With this, the police were finally able to identify the first member of the gang without arresting him immediately. The police hoped to benefit from Collins as he could provide them with important information about the remaining gang members. After several days of surveillance, the police observed John Collins meeting another man in a cafe just half a mile from Hatton Garden. At first, the police had no doubt about his connection with the gang. But after checking John Collins's phone records, they discovered that his name was Brian Rear. The investigators realized that the surveillance operation would take a long time to catch all the gang members, which would give the gang more time to dispose of the stolen loot. The police also wanted to recover as much of the stolen goods as possible, so they decided to offer a reward of 20,000 British pounds to anyone who could provide them with information or evidence that would help in capturing the gang members. However, the opposite of what was expected happened. People did not take the theft seriously. Instead, the gang gained public sympathy, as they were seen as elderly men still attempting to carry out such major crimes, especially since they did not kill or injure anyone during the operation. And this increased the unexpected public sympathy, making it more difficult for the police to gather information about the gang's whereabouts. The media coverage of the operation portrayed the gang as heroic figures due to their ability to break into a vault believed to be fortified and impenetrable despite their advanced age. As a result, matters became more complicated for the police as they had to intensify surveillance on individuals suspected of belonging to the gang to prevent their escape or disposal of the stolen goods. Every hour that passed meant the gang might dispose of the evidence, so the pressure was increasing on the investigators to make arrests before it was too late. The police monitored John Collins as he drove to a pub in North London, where he met Terry Perkins and Daniel Jones. Up to this point, the identities of 4 gang members have been identified by the police: John Collins, Brian Reader, Terry Perkins, and Daniel Jones. They were all placed under close surveillance. The police insisted on gathering as much information as possible about their activities and interactions, hoping to uncover additional details about their plans to ensure the success of their arrest. The investigators did not only monitor the visible activities, but they also analyzed their phone calls. In one of the intercepted calls, Collins asked about the price of a hydraulic pump at the big tool store. On the second day of the raid, surveillance cameras recorded Collins driving his white Mercedes with Daniel Jones. After a while, they went to the store, and Daniel Jones went in to make the purchase. Here, he made a big mistake when he gave his real name and address during the purchase. And after reviewing the surveillance camera recordings, the investigators were able to determine the date of this visit, which was the 1st of May 2015, providing them with more strong evidence of their involvement in the crime. This mistaken identity by Jones was a turning point in the investigation, as it became possible track them more accurately through their real identities, and after about a month the police continued their pursuit to obtain more evidence to link these men to the crime. The pressure was increasing on them. On Friday, Collins was spotted meeting with Perkins and Rear at a pub for dinner, as an undercover police officer decided. Following them inside the pub to film and record the meeting with a hidden camera, he was also very close to them, capturing all their faces clearly during their conversation. During this meeting, they discussed what happened on the second night after his withdrawal, showing that Perkins was expressing his concern and asking for his share of the loot because he was the one who planned it. The thing that made the police certain that these elderly men were the ones who carried out the Hatton Garden heist was when Collins explained how he used the hydraulic pump to push the safe deposit box cabinet, because it was the only part of the plan that Perkins was not aware of since he withdrew on the first night. Based on these discussions, the police learned all these details by presenting the recorded video to a lip-reading expert, who provided them with an accurate transcript of the conversation between the three, which was a crucial breakthrough in the investigation. As a result of this new information, the police were able to obtain a special warrant to wiretap the cars of each from Collins and Perkins, which allowed them to track their calls and conversations in the hope that this surveillance would help them identify the remaining gang members and recover the stolen items. After a few days of wiretapping the gang's calls and conversations, the police began receiving vital information for the first time. The name Carl Wood was mentioned, revealing that Brian Rear and Carl Wood had withdrawn after the first night of the theft and did not return with the others for the second attempt. After identifying 5 members of the gang, investigations and surveillance continued to uncover the 6th member, who was known as Vasil. It turned out that Vasil was an electronics expert, and he was the one who disabled the alarm system, which helped the gang access the building and carry out their theft. Despite 6 weeks passing, the investigators were unable to gather any evidence about Vasil, as no clear pictures of him were captured during surveillance. However, they had only one picture, but it was not clear enough to identify him. The police now focused on the 5 identified members, hoping to recover as much of the stolen loot as possible without wasting more time. During this period, the investigators discovered many mistakes made by the gang during the robbery, which helped them expand their search. After the theft, the gang took the loot to Collins' house, where they planned to keep it until it was divided among them. However, Collins faced a problem because he was unable to store the loot in his house due to his wife's arrival the next day. So they decided to divide the loot into small parts until they could arrange a time and find a suitable place for the division. After this meeting, Collins gave his share to his brother-in-law, Ben Lincoln, while Daniel Jones buried his share in a cemetery. Although the investigators were aware that the gang was keeping the loot in several different locations, they chose to wait to capture the gang simultaneously to recover a large portion of the stolen goods. More than 6 weeks after the theft, the gang finally met to discuss how all the parts would be collected and moved to another location. 4. Its division. This meeting was crucial in the gang's plan, but it was also the starting point for the police to carry out mass arrests. The gang agreed to meet behind the bar, where they would bring the loot in a taxi and then hand it over to Collins's car, after which they would head directly to Perkins' daughter's house. Perkins had sent his daughter away to use her house as a safe place to store the loot. Meanwhile, the police were monitoring all these movements through city cameras, and security officers were ready to intervene at any moment. Finally, all the gang members gathered. At Perkins' daughter's house, while they were preparing to divide the loot, the police raided the house and the properties of every partner in the gang. This attack resulted in the arrest of the gang members, as the police raid came unexpectedly, causing chaos and severe panic, and thwarting their plans to divide the loot. The police also found gold jewelry and diamonds worth £14 million that were stolen from a vault. After their arrest, Collins and Perkins pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit the theft to avoid a harsh trial, resulting in their sentences being reduced from 10 years to 6 years and 3 months, while the rest of the gang members were sentenced to 7 years in prison. As for the mysterious Vasil who disappeared after the heist, the police were only able to identify him after 3 years of intensive work on surveillance cameras, connecting the dots that led them to his name, Michael Seed, and he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. In a statement by one of the former armed robbers, he indicated that the gang would not have been imprisoned if they had acted cautiously like Vasil, who managed to evade capture for years. The police announced that only 4 million of the total stolen amounts have been recovered, while 10 million are still missing. It seems that each member of the gang took his share of the loot without everyone receiving their full portions when they met to divide the spoils. Despite the meticulous planning of this robbery carried out by the older members of the gang, simple mistakes were enough to thwart the operation, such as one of them using his personal car and another providing his name and address when purchasing a tool they would use in the theft, continuing to meet with each other and using their personal mobile phones to talk about the crime. All these mistakes, in addition to the meticulous organization by the investigators, which ultimately led to their arrest. And you, dear viewer, share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.